One February night in 2002, just a week after her 19th birthday, Rasha couldn't sleep. She didn't know why. The spring semester was underway at school, and she had classes to attend in the morning, but for some reason, sleep was a gold coin in the water just beyond her grasp. She went downstairs and turned on the TV, mindlessly changing channels until 4 a.m. She turned off the set and trudged back to her bedroom. On her way up the stairs, she noticed a bizarre reflection of lights shimmering in the mirror that sat right on the top of the fireplace. "I'm just seeing things," she thought, and continued up to bed. After a few minutes, she had mercifully dozed off. But half an hour later, Rasha suddenly opened her eyes. A female officer was shaking her, telling her in gray, official tones to get dressed. "Oh my God," Rasha thought, "somebody's died," and she felt her heart drop and crack. She immediately glanced over to her sister. "What the hell's going on?" she asked, but Reem just looked frightened. Shock and fear paralyzed Rasha, and her knees locked. "Ma'am, just get up," repeated the female officer. "Get up and get dressed." Disoriented, Rasha forced herself to slowly rise. She walked downstairs in her pajamas, a few steps behind her sister. She couldn't feel her legs. Excuse me. In the living room, she saw her entire family sitting awkwardly on the couch, and she sighed with relief. "Thank God," she thought, "they're all okay." She sat beside her sister, and then noticed that her brother, Munir's legs were shackled. Shock turned to confusion as she realized that about 15 law enforcement officers, INS officials, U.S. Marshals, and FBI agents had taken over their residence. The strangers, some with guns, walked through her house as if they owned it. Out the window, she saw that it was the lights from their vehicles that had been shining into the living room. Fear began to bubble through her again. An FBI agent, the apparent leader of the group, stood in front of the family. He identified himself and asked each of them their names. He told them they were being investigated for possible terrorism connections and that they were going to be taken to Federal Plaza. He told them that due to their immigration status, they could be deported. If that were the case, they might be detained beforehand. If he told them that the detention would last only 2 or 3 days, and he told them that the detention would only last for 2 or 3 days. At this point, Rasha's mother became frantic, crying and screaming out questions. But the man's flat monotone reiterated that everything would be explained to them at Federal Plaza. This was no accident. This was no accidental arrest. The man seemed to know everything about the family, including the fact that Rasha's 2 youngest brothers, both minors, were U.S. citizens. He turned to Rasha's father and told him to arrange custody for the boys. Rasha's father suggested that his brother, who lives in New York City, could take care of them. He asked to call him, suggesting that the authorities wait before transporting them to Federal Plaza until his brother could arrive. But the agent torpedoed the idea. That would take too long, he said, and instructed him instead to wake the tenants below and leave the boys there. Rasha's father had no choice but to comply, and when they were ready to go, the agent turned to the entire family and said, "We're going to handcuff you now." Later, Rasha learned why her eldest brother had already been not only handcuffed but shackled. Munir is a deep and stubborn sleeper, and when an agent went to his downstairs bedroom to wake him, Munir was uncooperative. Why? He kept asking. Come on, get up, the agent said. Why? Just get up, the man repeated. And Munir asked why again. Get up, the agent yelled. Get up and put your hands together, like the way you pray. Munir swore at him and told him to get the hell away. So they shackled him, Rasha told me. You know, to tame him. Outside, the official vehicles had closed off the entire street. The agents shepherded the family into a van, and they sat on benches in the back, riding in silence except for Rasha's sobbing mother, until they arrived at Federal Plaza in Manhattan. The ride was bumpy and disorienting, affording them no view of the road. When the van stopped and the back doors eventually swung open, they were all pulled from the vehicle into the building, where they were led to a room and then searched and fingerprinted before being dumped into a holding cell. They sat in the cell for what felt like half their lives. Eventually the cell door opened, and 2 FBI agents walked in. One was the man who had been in charge at their home. The 2 agents passed out flyers of alleged terrorists and wanted men, instructing them all to look at the pictures. The papers moved down the line of the family. Do you know any of them? The head agent asked. No, everyone responded in turn, and Rasha realized that they themselves were being investigated as terrorists. Each family member was then escorted individually into a separate room. When Rasha's turn came, she was taken in handcuffs to a bare room furnished with a simple desk and a few chairs. They began questioning her. Where was she on X day? When did she go to Y place? She looked at her interrogators. How did they know where she had been? She answered their questions, realizing that they already knew what she was going to say. Her interrogators were neither rude nor abrasive. They were polite, and why shouldn't they have been? There was nothing she could tell them that would help their investigation. After a few minutes, they even seemed to be feeding her the answers to her questions. None of this lessened her fear. Rasha was scared to death about what was happening and what was going to happen. But the whole drama seemed stupid, scripted, and pro forma, a badly choreographed dance of bureaucracy and dread.